Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our first impressions of the new releases from Taproot, Harm's Way, Nervosa, and Code Orange. So a very diverse day in the world of metal and new releases, and I'm going to start out with the first album that I listened to today, which is Common Suffering by Harm's Way. We checked out Silent Wolf, we reacted to that. We didn't like it very much, and that was the only single that we even checked out, because I think there was another single released. But, so coming into this album, I'm thinking like, I don't know, man, I wasn't huge on that single. But you know what? I was pleasantly surprised. Now, before I get into it, we did review Posthuman, their last record, back in February of 2018, which is a lot longer ago than it might seem.
Some time ago.
We both gave it a 7. We both thought it was a solid album.
Yeah.
Now, I like I said, I was expecting this album to not be good, and while it didn't blow my mind, I'm like, this was not bad. And when you have your expectations raised like that, it's a really pleasant surprise. You're like, oh, okay, maybe it's not so bad. Denial does this really cool compound 4+6 figure in the verses, so you add that up and that's 10, right? So it's like a 10-4 count. But if you listen to the musical phrasing, it sounds like a compound of like a bar of 4 on top of a bar of 6, which I thought was really cool. A really cool thing to hear pretty like off the bat with this album. Yeah, I thought that was neat. And then the groove in the middle, with the way that the guitar sound and the layering, kind of reminds me of The Art of Dying by Gojira, which is one of my favorite songs. So I'm like, whoa, like that's kind of cool. I like that too. And I was finding overall that this album had just cool grooves and stuff. Like, I would put it on and be like, this is pretty cool. I can dig it. Hollow Cry is a good example of that. Like, just a good track. And I was finding that happening a few times. Like, and the guitar riff in Devour, that one was interesting because it's like the guitar kind of goes up like a 5th interval and then down to like a minor 2nd from like the root that they start with. And it's like, it's not really like typical, but I like that they kind of go up like a perfect interval just to go down to like this minor 2nd, which is what you would normally do in like evil sounding music, right? Yeah. So I thought that was actually kind of neat. But yeah, like it's a pretty good album. Nothing that was like mind blowing though. I kind of felt like it's like if I really wanted to put on some metal and kind of groove to it, bam, there it is. And I can dig it. And they break up the pace a little bit. Thought it was neat. A funny, weird thing I found, I don't know if you found this, maybe not. What? The sound effects in the middle of Terrorizer sound like a ride at an amusement park.
No.
Like, I'm listening to that, I'm like, it sounds like there's some guy who's like pressing the buttons for like some ride at a park, and then you just hear it like functioning or whatever.
Like soundboard kind of
like
thing.
The soundboard stuff, or like the sirens or whatever. Like, I don't know, that's just what I thought when
I didn't catch that. You know what's interesting that you know what? It's based on the single, I guess. But it's interesting that we both like Posthuman, but you were expecting a bad album here because of the single alone.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's been a long time since we heard Posthuman at all, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, this album doesn't sound like Posthuman, so you really gotta kind of base what, you know, your expectations are based on what they reveal from the album.
That's
right?
true, that's
like,
true.
Posthuman was one thing, but they released a single from the new one, so that's what we heard from the new one, and we didn't like what we heard.
Yeah, so for some reason, my brain works a little differently. So, yeah, we didn't like the single. Okay, what was it called again? I didn't write it down.
Silent Wolf.
Silent Wolf. We didn't like Silent Wolf. But going into this album, my brain was telling me, oh yeah, Posthuman was a good album. I'm gonna like this. Like I was excited for it.
Is it like you just forgot about it?
I forgot about the single. Well, I felt like it might have been just like that's the single. The rest of the album is not gonna be like that. It's kind of like where my mind frame was, which happens, right?
Yeah.
So that's not the case though. This doesn't sound like Posthuman at all, and I feel like for me it's a downgrade. It's a step back. They went a lot more of a atmospheric route on this album. I found a lot more softer, a lot more toned down, just not as hardcore, not as heavy hitting. That's something that didn't quite land for me, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? And I have to commend the band for trying something new and for actually going out on a limb and actually trying to do something different. You have to respect that. So major props to them for that. It just didn't quite hit with me. A couple of songs that did land with me. Track number 4, Devour. I thought that song had great energy. Track number 7, Cyanide. Really cool groove that happens in the halfway mark. Some really cool
Exciting.
riffing on the back half of that song as well. Track number 5 is interesting. So this is called Undertow, featuring King Woman, which is an oxymoronic band name, if I may say so. But this is one of the songs that I'm talking about. It's got a very droned out vibe, very ethereal, very atmospheric energy to it.
It's a good pace breaker.
Good pace breaker, but there's stuff like that around on the other songs of the album too, right? It's not just in this song. So you can tell they're kind of going for a more, I don't know, I want to say an atmospheric vibe. Sound, yeah. And yeah, it's not quite what I wanted from this band. But I think for a lot of people that would work. I think for a lot of people could be attracted to this, and I think if I got used to it and listened to it a few more times, it could grow on me. I think there's some cool stuff there. You mentioned a few like music math type of things. Like they're actually putting thought into the songs, right? That's the point I'm making. Is they're not just playing standard 4/4 and not trying anything new. They're doing subtle things that add flavor and flair to songs, which is something we're always looking for. I think there's potential here for this album to grow and become, something you might like.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I said, I wasn't really expecting to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I generally enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So up next, let's talk about Jailbreak by Nervosa.
Nice.
We were looking forward to this album based on the 2 singles we did react to,
Which were Jailbreak,
the title track, and Seed of Death. Now, this is kind of a theme for all the albums of today, but it kind of took me a few songs to really sink my teeth into each one. And I think it makes sense because all 4 of these albums sound completely different from each other.
Yeah.
Like I said at the beginning of this video, a very diverse day in the world of metal.
Right.
They all sound very different. So, I went from the Taproot album to Nervosa, and like those are such a stark difference that it's like, okay, I gotta, shift gears here and get into like classic heavy metal kind of mode in a sense, or like thrashier kind of mode.
Yeah.
But once I got to like track 3, which was Ungrateful, it really started to heat up, and when it heated up, it was on fire. The drum plus guitar intro to Ungrateful, awesome, love that, and the guitar tone and riffs in the song, super sick. Seed of Death, here's what's cool about that, or interesting about that song. I remembered the video a bit more distinctly than the song, even though I loved the song when we reacted to it.
Yeah.
But I remembered the video of them like in the mountains and in that big kind of like open space.
The best part was when she's playing that solo
She's
on
playing
the bridge.
the solo on the bridge. Yeah. But it's like, I'm like, what did the song sound like again? And I'm listening to the song, I'm like, oh my god, yeah, this song's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Loved it. And it's like, I remembered more so the video at the time, but yeah, like the big intro, super duper awesome. And we mentioned this with the title track. It's a really cool modernization of an old school style of metal.
Yeah.
You know, they took like stuff like we mentioned like bands like Motorhead, like that,
Judas Priest,
Judas
Motorhead,
Priest,
that kind of British new wave heavy metal, basically.
British new wave, and they made it their own, and I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. The breakdown in the middle of Behind the Wall, enjoyed that, and it's like I'm kind of thinking to myself like, man, this album just really leveled up hard from like track 3, 4 onward. It's got a few features in it. When the Truth is a Lie with Gary Holt, who is mainly known for being one of the big guys in Exodus.
Yeah.
Also had some time in Slayer as well. Yeah. And I love how the intro built up and then just explodes. And I'm just like, whoa, okay, this riff is sick, what the hell. Also had a really nice guitar solo in that song. And Elements of Sin, which I believe was another single, which has a video, which we'd like to react to. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Had a similar deal intro-wise. And I kind of thought to myself, like, damn, I wish we kind of reacted to this song before checking out the album, because I would have, my reaction to hearing that for the first time was like, whoa! So it would have been a funny, like, fresh reaction. But yeah, like, there were just, like, constant sick riffs, constant cool moments. Last track, Nail the Coffin, has this dual guitar in, like, the middle. Like that as well. And I was kind of thinking to myself as I was listening to this album, like, you know, the vocals are pretty, like, consistent. Not exactly to a fault, but it would be cool to hear, like, more variation. And then we got that in Gates to the Fall, where they kind of sound deeper. Okay. I don't know if you thought that way when listening, but
didn't catch it, but
I was thinking about that, and then I got to that song, and then I'm like, oh, the vocals sound a little bit different here. So I thought that was neat.
Yeah, so just based on what I know about this band already, and based on the singles and stuff like that, I assumed I was gonna have a good time listening to this, and I definitely did.
Yeah, we did review this album before.
This band.
Or this band. This band, sorry, with Perpetual Chaos.
Yeah, we did. And yeah, so we knew what we were getting into, and I feel like they just did not disappoint. I feel like just from the gate, this album just starts slaying right away. But TV Fish mentioned track 3, Ungrateful. For me, standout track on a first impression. This song's so good. In the middle, when this tapping section starts, it just gets so fucking good from that point on. Sick grooves, super rad soul. Just the momentum this song has, really, really awesome. Seed of Death. Now, I remember when we listened to that, we did the reaction. I kind of remember it reminding me of like Slayer, like Seas in the Abyss kind of thing. When I listen to it again, I'm getting Arch Enemy vibes from it, right? So there's kind of a mixture there, which is kind of a cool little flavor, little concoction, which it was sounded pretty nice. We talked about Jailbreak already, the influences, blah, blah, blah. When the Truth is a Lie. So the Gary Holt feature and also the following song, Superstition Failed, features Lena Scissorhands from, what was her band called? Infected Rain? Infected Rain. I wasn't really a big fan of these two features on this album. I felt like both of these songs, like the features are fine, but these songs as a whole are the weakest on the album for me, which kind of sucks as features. I feel like the last song was great, Nail the Coffin, super cool snare roll intro, some nasty riffing in this song. Overall, really cool stuff from Nervosa. I'm looking forward to listening to it more, and I feel like there's a lot of potential there for a lot of cool stuff.
Alright, so let's talk about Taproot. This album's called Scissors, stylized with a backslash in it, and I mean it.
And no O.
And yeah, wait, there's no O either. I don't know. Either way, Taproot is one of many early 2000s new metal bands dropping albums in this year.
Yeah.
This is their first album in 11 years, so it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Since they've released like brand new, full album content. I never really checked out this band much. Not too many of these specific bands that happen to be dropping ones, like the early 2000s ones. There's not too many that I heard much from. So I didn't know exactly what to expect from this album. But the main takeaway I found, before I get into details about tracks, is that I'm very happy that this album does not sound like a quote-unquote cash grab. It doesn't sound like this band came back after 11 years just to try to make some money. It sounds more like this band came back to make some music.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of decisions in this album are artistically inclined. A lot of it is very creative. It sounds like it's a carefully crafted album as to what they want, as opposed to like, let's just kind of throw something together and come back and see what happens. They're like, no, we felt inspired. Let's make something and do something cool. Love that is the vibe I got from this album. That it has soul that way. And the album has a pretty distinct character to it as well. Now, first two songs, or first chunk, I mentioned it was kind of tough to sink my teeth into everything at the jump, but it kind of felt like the album wasn't sure what it wanted to be for a bit. It was kind of like, this section of the song sounds like this, and then this section sounds like a completely different song. So it was kind of like a bit aimless or unfocused for a little bit. A song like Favorite Song, it literally feels like two songs fused together. So I'm wondering, is this supposed to be like a really kind of hard, heavy song, or like a more fun, anthemic kind of song?
Yeah.
Kind of feels like a weird hybrid of the two that doesn't really get to the point. It's like when you make a song that sounds like this, you gotta kind of choose one. And if you don't want to choose one, you gotta be really careful with how you put it together and make it work.
Right.
Because it's definitely possible to have a song sound, quite varied and make it work. We Control Our Destiny started to feel a bit more comfortable with me, and maybe that was just me finally adjusting, right,
settling into what the band sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it feels to me though, during my first listen, it felt more focused and it had cool melodic aspects and some hard stuff as well. No One Else to Blame, I like that as well, and it felt like at that point the album was starting to heat up a little bit for me. Imagining it has some artistic auto-tune in it, which is pretty cool. But always love seeing that as a paintbrush. And it's got this cool little drum break in it as well. I found that near the end of this album, I started to get reminded a little bit of System of a Down. Not to say that this sounded just like them, but I felt like some of the melodic runs that were happening, and it like reminded me of what I would hear from System. And it wasn't as zany, wacky.
No.
But I feel like it was in that ballpark. You know, there was some kind of like, okay, they're doing a little bit of weird stuff, but just not as crazy.
You gotta figure though, I do agree. I did hear that as well. I couldn't quite put my finger on exactly what it was, but I did think of System of a Down while I was listening to this. Mm-hmm. And you gotta realize that they're from the same era, generally, like early 2000s.
That's true, right? That's true, yeah.
They're generally from the same realm of musical time frame. So it's not a huge surprise. And they're also genre partners in a sense, so it's not a huge surprise that you'll hear weird parallels. Even though these bands sound nothing alike, there are some similarities there, which are kind of weird, but they're there.
Yeah, you make a good point.
Speaking of good points, non-points. So Ilya Soriano from Non-Point makes a feature on this album in this song, favorite song, which is track 2, which Fish spent a bunch of time talking about. I'm not going to go too much into it, except the ending has a Alexa, play Taproot at the end of the song, which I thought was kind of funny. Also kind of pointless, because if you're already listening to Taproot, then what's that going to do?
Yeah, you already have Taproot on. Like, you're already listening.
So yeah, I haven't listened to Taproot in many years, and I was never really a huge fan of them, just their major hits really, which I couldn't even name if I tried right now, but a couple songs caught my attention. So Scared Together, which is track number 5, this song caught my attention right off the bat. I was like, okay, here's a song I can get behind. But then when the singing started, I was like, ugh, I don't know if I like that. Ugh. And I kind of started tossing, going, what is this? For me, this is one of those songs that has potential, right? A song that kind of grabs you right away, then does something kind of stinky, and you're like, ugh, it's rubbing me the wrong way. Those are the kind of songs where you just kind of got to get used to it, whatever the decision they made or whatever kind of vocal style they had. You got to get used to it, right? Sometimes things throw you off. So, potential for that song. I think it's a highlight on the album, but I'm not quite sure yet. Track number 8, Love Without You, featuring Audrey Ray, who's a country singer. I thought this was very interesting because I can't think of any other example of a metal band or an alternative band collaborating with a country artist.
It's not common.
It's not common at all. So I thought, credit to them for that, right? Mm-hmm. So while I'm listening to the song, I write in my notes, I don't like the song, not digging it. But then I write in my notes, this song is actually pretty nice. It's just kind of like, well, you know what? This ain't bad. for a nice, mellow, calm song featuring a country artist, on vocals.
Just grew on you in real time.
I'm like, this is actually a pretty nice song. I mean, I'm not gonna say I love it. I'm not gonna request it at a show or anything like that, but it was a nice song. Okay. After that, The Best Thing in Life, which is not the last track, sorry. There's 11 tracks on it. This is track number 9. He sings the line, "The best things in life aren't free." And if I recall correctly, that line was mentioned earlier on in the album, which is something we always like to mention, is callbacks
really?
and things like that.
That's
if I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure I heard it earlier on, and then when I heard it in this, I went, yeah, I heard that already. I think they're calling back, which is kind of cool. So self-continuity, self-referential kind of thing. So overall, I agree with Fish. I think this was a pretty solid album. I feel like they definitely put a lot of work into it to make it sound good, and didn't just slap something together, which anybody can do. There's thought in this album. There's feeling in this album. There's planning and all these kinds of things. And I respect that. I think that's all great stuff. Did I love it? No. I've never really loved this band, and this album is not going to make me do it. But I do think it's a solid release, especially after an 11-year hiatus. So, yeah, good stuff from Taproot. Also, I'd like to mention the cover art is 2 hands doing scissors, which is a stalemate in rock, paper, scissors, by the way.
I guess.
It's also
I mean, unless you're the Acclaimed, and everyone loves the Acclaimed.
Yeah.
So, give a scissor in the comments. Anyway, last but definitely not least, The Above by Code Orange. Now, I love this band. I'll say that straight up. I listened to Underneath yesterday to hype myself up, and it did I'm glad that I kind of got a fresh reference to that album in my mind listening to this to kind of get an idea as to how this band has evolved even from that album. Now, One thing about this album, an overarching thing that I really think is great, is that it has a lot of personality to it, and a lot of character in every song. There are so many notes here. Like I'm not gonna, mention them all, but I just kept finding moments in songs where I'm like, what the heck is this? What the heck is that? What's going on? What the heck? Underneath, was a really hard album, but really underground, kind of glitchy, kind of gritty sounding album. This album feels like you took the basis of that and expanded on it. Like a flower just grew out of that album and blossomed a bunch of petals that were just, more mellow stuff, more almost hip-hop sounding stuff. Like there's just so much more bases that this band covered in this album, but I feel like they did it in a great way. We reacted to Take Shape, which another thing with this album is that like that song and a few others are a lot more accessible. I feel like, if I were to try to get someone into Code Orange, would I give them Underneath? I don't know, because that album is kind of like a bit of an acquired taste with how weird it gets. But I feel like songs like Take Shape and even Circle Through, like songs like that, I feel like you could kind of give to someone and anyone can really enjoy them. Take Shape also has Billy Corgan on it, which is cool. We reacted to the music video for that, which was a great video. There was another video for a song called Mirror, which we didn't react to, but we checked it out, which was also a great video. I think the song is incredible. It's a very soft, quiet song. Reba is the lead vocal on this song, and that's another cool thing, is that she's singing a lot more on this album than I heard on Underneath. Just a very, very pretty, sad sounding song. There's like this piano that shows up in like the bridge area, and you just float away.
But it's not like a ballad though.
It's
like
not though.
The way you're describing it, you almost make it sound like a ballad, but it's not. It's soft in comparison to like other Code Orange stuff that's kind of hyper, but it's like it still has like almost like a 90s alternative rock, alternative metal, if you want to say that type of vibe to it.
It does.
Which a lot of this album has that vibe.
Yeah, and if you want to look on the flip side, look at a song like The Game. This was actually one of the singles, and I think it had a video. We didn't check it out. But when this song starts, it is a giant, massive nuclear explosion of energy, and it's just fucking crazy. Like, when it first came on, I'm like, whoa, what is this? What are they doing? Oh my gosh. There's a point in the middle where they start speeding up and they get faster. I'm like, geez, this song was already fast. Like I'm faster. I kind of thought to myself, it's kind of like a spiritual successor to Swallowing the Rabbit Hole from the last record. I kind of got a similar overarching vibe, and I'm wondering to myself, was that intentional? Or was that, maybe it was. I feel like this album has a lot of depth to it. I was reading up about it a little bit, and I read that they mentioned that it's the kind of album where the more you look, the more you feel rewarded. And I feel like there's so much to unpack in this album that there's a lot to discover the more you listen, I find. And I was thinking, like, there are so many songs that sound different. I think this band does a great job at making conventional structures sound unconventional. They'll be like, okay, here are our sections of the song. This part is really fucking heavy. This part is like really melodic and chill. But I feel like rhythmically they find a way to kind of stitch them together and make it work. And I think that's really impressive, because that's hard to do.
Yeah, so for me, just to again use Underneath as a reference, I hated that album. I felt like it was just like every idea they had, they put in that album. If it was good, bad, doesn't matter. It was a complete discombobulated mess to me. I did not like it at all. This album, however, pleasantly surprised. I was not coming into this with high hopes. I feel like they took only the good ideas and put them on this album, and it's a lot more grounded. Where the last album, the last album doesn't even touch the ground. It bounces off the walls and the ceiling constantly. It doesn't even hit the floor. This one is nice and grounded, with moments of hyper chaos. You mentioned The Game already. I'll mention a couple more tracks that actually rip. A Drone Opting Out of the Hive, track number 6. Just heavy compared to other tracks, and the ending just rips.
Especially because that's right after Mirror, too.
Grooming My... yeah, exactly.
Like, right after Mirror, bang!
Grooming My Replacement, track number 10. this is the circle pit song of the album.
Yeah,
right?
that was another single actually. Apparently.
Was it? Okay, cool. So my takeaway from this album on first impression is that it reminded me of a lot of other bands. Okay, and that's something that kind of I do as a listener. I go, okay, I'm hearing this. It's reminding me. What's my point of reference here? What's this kind of harkening back to in my memory bank of music listening through my life? Okay, and for me, this was taking me back to like the 90s, like 90s alternative rock, 90s grunge, 90s I guess alternative metal, whatever you want to pocket these bands into. And then into the early 2000s new metal, but maybe even more modern new metal. Maybe something like Tala, for example. I'm hearing a lot of vibes on this that could be kind of paralleled and associated with a band like that.
It's funny you bring that up too, considering that Max Portnoy is now the drummer for Code Orange as well.
Exactly.
Having his band Tala.
So there's a parallel if you want to.
There you go.
There's one.
The drummers in both bands.
So the album starts, Never Far Apart is the first track. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty rad, and it's kind of reminding me of like Antichrist era Manson.
I was thinking Manson as well.
And I go, wow, this is cool. And I really like Reba's voice on it too. So Reba and Jamie are both singing, and I'm like, okay, I really like Reba's parts on here. Then the album continues. Track number 4, The Mask of Sanity Slips. It's the longest song, 5 minutes and 8 seconds. Now I'm getting Hollywood or Mechanical Animals Marilyn Manson vibe. I'm like, can't get a lot of Manson vibes on this album. Not a bad thing, pretty cool. This song also has a nice little cool double bass spurt at the 2 minute and 3 seconds.
Dude,
Mark,
I noted that. I'm like, that's the tiny thing was so fucking cool.
So juicy. Then Mirror, for example, there's Reba singing on this song again. Such a beautiful tone in her voice. She's got a really unique voice. It reminded me of something you hear from like 90s grunge, but way more refined. Like refined, like something you'd hear maybe like early 2000s alt rock or alt pop artists like maybe Pink or Nelly Furtado, something more pure in the voice, not as grungy, but it was like a mixture of those things.
Yeah.
Really unique sounding, really nice tone. She's got a deeper tone for a woman too, which I found really, really like attractive to my ears. I Fly. Smashing Pumpkins is all over this song, okay? And Billy Corgan's featured on the album. There's other songs like Smashing Pumpkins, Incubus, Bush, Silverchair, 9 Inch Nails. Like, I'm getting all these vibes from all these bands, but this is a good way. This isn't a good way, because sometimes you hear things and you go, oh, they're ripping that off, or they're ripping that off. This is like bringing me back to sounds that I liked and I grew up with.
But with a modern...
With a modern twist to them, a modern punch, a modern pizzazz, if I could say that.
And a lot of aggression.
A lot of aggression. But it's not too much aggression either. It's like, it's finely sprinkled in throughout the album.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like half is aggressive and half is soft. It's like melded very well, it seems.
I feel like the soft moments make the aggressive ones better. Because then when they do hit hard, it feels harder than if the whole album sounds like that. Yeah, it's more impactful.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm hearing, I don't know if I mentioned Korn as well. We're hearing a lot of Korn vibes over here, even stuff that sounds like John Davis, like in the song The Above, the title track. He says, "What am I supposed to be?" And the way he says it sounds like how John Davis would say it, right? But then right after that, I'm like, this shit has Trent Reznor all over it. Like, this just has 9 Inch Nails all over it.
It's just like this album is like a love letter to the 90s.
It's like imagine if Trent Reznor wrote a Korn song that was performed by Tala. Or something like that. Like, it's a love letter to the 90s. You could say that because it's got a lot of those vibes to it, but it feels modern. It doesn't feel old. So there's a lot going on here. My biggest thing is I don't know the other vocalists, because I know that the keyboard player, I think, does vocals as well. I don't know how prominent he is on the album because I'm not familiar enough with Jamie's voice to distinguish between him and another male. I can point out Reba because obviously a female voice is much different than a male voice. But I would like to figure out where the other vocalist is coming in, if it's just harmonies, if he's got his own songs he's singing. But another band is reminding me of for this aspect of Mastodon, only because Mastodon has multiple singers and they each have distinct voices, distinct flavors, distinct styles. So there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on
this
here.
Album with is a trip. Like, wow. Anyway, I think for what album we reviewed this week, I think Code Orange, their album The Above, is the play.
Yeah.
Because like we mentioned so much, and there's so much more in this album. We are going to listen to this album nonstop throughout the entire week to discover so much more that lies underneath The Above. and we'll be right back in a week's time to give you guys our final review of that album. Anyway, guys, that's all we got for you today. Remember to like this video if you liked it. Comment, tell us in the comments below what did you think of today's new releases, and subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
And I'm Bile Self.
We'll see you guys later.